I see it really happening starting this year, where more and more people are waking up. And waking up means that you realize that you're more than what you thought you were. You realize that the world is more than when you thought it was. So that's what humans are starting to do independently, is they're starting to see the beauty in the world and starting to see how beautiful they are and how powerful they are. And that we're not what we've been told that we are. We are beings of light having this incredible experience in these sacred bodies that we've created and allowed to be part of the housing of our light. That's what I see happening, is people waking up to their magnificence.
Life is but a dream. Life is but a dream. Life is but a dream. Yeah. Thank you all for being here on this wonderful day. Welcome to the Praise the Sun podcast, where I'm honored to have on my guest, Marie Manuchehri. Thank you for being here. How are you, Marie?
I'm so great. Thank you for having me, Sage. I love your background. I love your experiences. I love the questions that we've just slightly talked about before we even went live. So I'm
Yeah.
really excited for our time together. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. It's a great honor and a privilege. So if you could, let's start out by talking about like how your whole spiritual awakening happened within you. Like I remember hearing multiple interviews and was just like moved by like the abilities and how you were also nurtured within the workspace to even lean into it. It was all so fascinating and wonderful. So could you begin to talk about it, please?
Sure. Well, I was really blessed to be raised in a spiritual family. My parents were very religious when I was born. I'm the oldest of five, and we're all a year apart, so a little cray cray. And my parents left the church when I was about six, because my youngest sibling had been very ill, and he had to go in and out of the hospital for about 18 months. And my parents were just beside themselves with exhaustion. And so my mother wanted to take birth control pills to not have any more children. And they were very naive, very religious people. They were Roman Catholic, actually. And so they went to their priest and said, hey, it's just not healthy for us to have another child. We're exhausted and, all of this stuff. And of course, the priest excommunicated my mom, not my dad, but my mother from the church. And my parents were like devastated. And after a time, my parents actually got divorced. And my mother, after she was done being mad at God, started to buy metaphysical books and put them in our home. And I started reading them at a very young age. So I really believed in intuition and psychic ability and mediumship. I read Seth Speaks as soon as it came out. I was quite young. And so I was very lucky in that way. I literally had no idea that I was an intuitive or a psychic. I had some experiences that were quite unique and very special, but they weren't regular. Like they would happen, 5 years apart or sometimes 10 years apart. But it wasn't until I was in my late 30s and I started working in a hospital in the Seattle area, where I still live. I've lived my whole life here, except for 4 years in Oregon, and which is basically living in the same area, honestly. But I was working on oncology, and it was such a funny choice for me to make. My family's also very holistic. My mother's 87, has never taken a prescription drug except for like antibiotics. And I have to literally force them on her. And the rest of the family gets mad at me, not all of them, but some of them, because my family's so incredibly holistic and very much into natural remedies. And so I decided to go to modern medicine's nursing school. And my family was not happy, my family of origin. I loved it, though. I really believe in following one's joy. I don't think intuition has anything to do with the logical mind. I think it has everything to do with passion and joy. And we don't know what that's going to be, because you can't find your joy logically. It's impossible. So I went to nursing school, loved every moment, became a nurse. And because of some weird things that were happening to me, I used to work graveyard at the hospital. And I started to have tachycardia. My heart started to race for months before I actually went and visited a cardiologist. And I went in to see him, and he really thought I had a mitral valve prolapse, which is a valve in the heart, as if it had sunken down. But it hadn't. Luckily, I went through a battery of tests, and my heart was fine. But he said my biorhythms were off. and I needed to go to day shift. And the only shift available that would become day, had to start out at graveyard for a couple of months and then go to day shift, was the oncology floor, which you can only imagine when you're raised so holistically. And now you're going to give the most potent chemicals on earth to human beings. And my family of origin, again, was not happy at all about that. But I loved every minute of it. Every second. I miss the oncology floor today, which they've changed the hospital so much. It's not even where it used to be. It's like a storage area now where I used to work. And I know that because my daughter's given birth twice in that hospital. And so I've walked through the storage area because it was so incredible for me. But I started having psychic impressions in the hospital. And that's where it all began for me.
Beautiful. Wow. So when you have the psychic impressions, how does it appear to you? Um, yeah, I guess visually. I didn't want to say visually because it might not be visually, but like, how does it come into your awareness essentially?
Yeah, great question. Thank you so much, Sage. Well, I'm highly psychic, so I hear, see, and feel and smell sometimes psychically, but my strongest gift is clairvoyance, so I can see. And that's how it really began for me. Um, I, switched to day shift, and for a year, my tachycardia went away, and my body would started to get healthier because I wasn't, sleep deprived. And then about a year after that, I started to get tachycardia again. And I realized it was, of course, stress related. So I joined a meditation group to help me. I tried to meditate for years, years and years and years, and I wasn't able to. And even though I was highly spiritual at that point, I'd never had an astrology reading. I'd never seen a tarot reader. I'd never seen a psychic. A lot of my mom's friends thought they were psychic, and I thought they were wackos a little bit. I mean, they were lovely, but I thought they were a little wacky. So I'd never really had those experiences. I just had my own, honestly. And so I joined this meditation group. What I didn't know is that the woman who was leading the group was a medical intuitive, and we would meet in her basement for 6 weeks at a time. I took her class twice. And during these meditations, I would have these incredible experiences as if a camera were in my brain, where the third eye is, which I didn't even know what chakras were. Even though I read a lot of books, you would think I'd come across energy medicine. And there would be this camera that dropped in my body on the inside. And I could see my esophagus, my larynx. I could see all of my internal organs, and it would go all the way down to my reproductive organs. Actually, I could see my fallopian tubes, my ovaries, and this would happen during meditation. And I thought the first time that it happened that as soon as I come out of meditation, that the camera would be gone. But the camera stayed with me for months. It didn't matter if I was working, if I was taking care of my kids. I have three daughters. They were quite young at the time, and or anything else. I had this constant awareness of my internal organs and the physiology and what was occurring. But I have all of the clairs, if you will.
I love that. All of the clairs. I love that. Wow. Um, so for the audience who doesn't have like clairvoyance, like what would be the best way to express that? Because I even learned that some people don't even actually have the ability to like have imagery in their mind. Like if you say visualize the apple, there are actually a certain percentage of people who can't do that. So like could you like maybe elaborate a little bit more for those people who like trying to reach that side of clairvoyance but they can't quite get there?
Sure. So I can see inside my brain, but most of the time I see things outside of me as if they're floating, like along with having this camera. And I would see like a life, it was as if I was with the camera looking inside of my body in real time, almost like a discovery, educational video that they had for kids. That, that bus, I forget what it was called. I also had another psychic thing happening to me at the same time is I would see hundreds of tiny golden pyramids spinning and humming around me all day long. I can see the pyramids when I talk about them. I can see them, but they're not a part of my vision anymore. And I would be lying in bed in the morning, about to open my eyes and wondering if the pyramids were still there. Because when all of these psychic experiences began to happen, I wasn't sure how long they were going to stay. Was this going to be permanent? Did I have a brain tumor? I mean, these questions really entered my mind. And I was married at the time, and I didn't tell my husband about them at all. I didn't know how he was going to respond, but um, people in the hospital knew about it, and my meditation group knew. But so I would be laying in bed, eyes closed, and I could hear the hum of the pyramids, and then I would open my eyes and I would see them. But my guides taught me a very important gift that I teach all my students, all my clients, every single day. Is they taught me how to get away from my brain and to rest in the lower half of my body. Because even though the third eye is in the brain, the third eye is like a television screen. It projects information, intuitive information, even auditory sensations, even feelings. It doesn't matter how the intuition is expressed. The third eye is really a projector, like a television screen. And intuition comes from the second layer of the auric field, which is literally outside of our body. And if we can, it's about a foot away from our physical form from a textbook perspective. If we can rest our energy in the lower half of our body, meaning have more of your attention in your tummy or your glutes or your thighs or your feet, anywhere in the lower half, and kind of rest in there throughout the day or moments at a time, you'll then activate an access line to the second layer of the auric field so that information can go to the third eye and it can be projected to you so that you can see it, hear it, or feel it, however is going to come to you. But I've met a few people that you've described, Sage, who through just me helping them, they realize they're actually very visual and they can see perfectly fine. But so many people overthink and analyze in their brain from a fear perspective, and intuition is the opposite of fear. It's a very calm, compassionate, happy, surprising kind of experience that I have to get people to get out of their sympathetic aspect of their autonomic system to get into the parasympathetic so they can actually have access to their intuition, because everyone's naturally intuitive, at least for their very own life.
Wow, that was really powerful. Wow, even the fact that you've worked with those people who didn't have that visual capability. I mean, they do, but they haven't had that skill to floss it yet, and then they work with you, and now they do. That's powerful. What do you think the pyramids represented to you? Like, what were they? Yeah, what were those about?
I did eventually figure that out, by the way. It took me a couple years because I'm one of those people, because I've just been so busy in my career. I'm a very happy person most of the time. I love my family. I spend a lot of time in nature and with my kids. I also have grandchildren. So I sometimes I'm so in the moment having experiences that I kind of just wait for the universe to bring me information. And I was working with a client one day when I used to see people in person, and I was holding her head and I heard this whole story about one of her past lives, which then answered my question about the pyramids. So a while ago, way before cars, and mostly in like the Egyptian or Persian era of geography back way back in the day, when babies were born in tribes, there would be seekers or seers who would go to births where it had been reported back to them that the child could have natural intuitive psychic abilities. And eventually, if that was clarified, if they went and visited the family or asked people who were at the birth, if that was clarified, then at some point, people from psychic teaching schools would go to the parents and ask if they could take the child. And the child would live with them forever, and they would be safeguarded in pyramids. The children would learn at night because there were obviously some nefarious people who wanted psychic, influencers in their life. And so these children were safeguarded, and ultimately their gifts were used for good, or that was always the plan. So I had some past lives in psychic schools, I think as a teacher, I'm sure originally as a student. So that's what the pyramids were all about.
Wow. So when we have these past lives, but we step into the human form, so we kind of take on the veil. How do we re-tap into this knowledge that already exists within us? Because all of that knowledge that we have from each lifetime goes somewhere, and yet we have that kind of veil that kind of initially prevents us until we do some spiritual work to tap back into it. But how do we begin to tap back into it?
Such a great question. I think through consciousness, a lot of people are not conscious on earth right now, although we're at the highest vibration earth has ever been at. So consciousness is obviously more popular, and people can even have careers in the intuitive realm and have podcasters that talk about past lives. I mean, so we're clearly moving into an important aspect, but consciousness is really knowing about what one really feels, not what they think, but what they feel. And a lot of people are very disconnected from their emotions. When I start working with a client, the first thing I do, because I like to go in cold, so my assistants are not allowed to tell me why they're having a session with me. But the first thing I check on is their emotional response system. I want to know what they're really feeling, not what they're going to tell me. I will listen, of course, compassionately, and will answer all of their questions, but I want to know what they're authentically feeling, and that's consciousness. So if we can get more people to actually start to feel their real emotions, then they're going to be able to get into their intuitive awareness and then be able to see their past lives. I've seen a slew of my past lives, and it's challenging too, because typically the ones that are still vibrating in holograms that are outside of our auric field that are slightly affecting us, they're usually not happy. They're unresolved. I've cried a lot of tears looking at some of my past lives, but it also helped to make a lot of sense to some of the experiences that I'm having in this lifetime.
Wow, it really is about being present and grounding yourself and having that self-awareness, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And we live in a society where we have that instant gratification going on with technology, and you just pick up your phone and you get a hit of dopamine. So it's not a surprise that people haven't had that capability or time to just sit with themselves to improve their self-awareness. But I'm very optimistic, like you said, and I'm hopeful that things like this get to the people so they can start to understand the power of the natural capabilities that we already have. I had a question because I guess it correlates to the clairvoyance. So many, and I think I spoke about this, so forgive me, audience, if you already heard me speak about this, but many years ago, I was getting an MRI, and I think this is like a decent amount of time into my already spiritual awakening. And at times when I meditate, there would be a blue flame that comes into my awareness, and I would kind of interact with it. And during an MRI, the blue flame came, and I was a bit confused, but I was like, maybe I'm in a meditative state. And it said to me, you need to check on your friend Miles, who just got into an argument with his brother. I said, that is very oddly specific, but I will follow through with it, because I mean, it's so specific. It'll be pretty easy to tell if it was nonsense or not. And sure enough, I get out of there, I hit up my friend. He said, yeah, I got into a fight with my brother. He spit in my face. And I was just flabbergasted, because I was like, why did that just come to me? Like, and it was so oddly specific. So what realm of, is that clairvoyance, like clairaudience? Because also there's an audio, I also make music, so I'm a bit auditory with things. Music hits me in an entirely different way. It moves me deeply. So what did that sound like to you? Is that clairvoyant or what?
Well, it sounds very clairaudient, but intuition is so powerful. It's like you're immersed in this hologram of all kinds of feels and experiences. In fact, what we call it, because professional psychics, we don't really care if we hear, see, or feel it. We don't care, honestly. We just want to know. So it's a sense of knowingness. I had this experience once. One of our friends, this was a while ago, he had been ill, but he hadn't been diagnosed with anything, and um, he was about to get diagnosed, and I was home alone, which was weird at the time. I had, with a family, you're rarely home alone. And this is before I knew I was psychic. And I was a new nurse, just graduated from nursing school. And I was walking through the living room, and all of a sudden I felt this beautiful glow and warmth around me. And then I could see all this light around me. I felt as if I was being levitated about like 30 inches or so above the ground, which I wasn't. And I wasn't scared. I've never been afraid or had an uncomfortable experience, but I think my upbringing helped me to be prepared for the life I believe I'm meant to experience here on earth. And as I was feeling this levitation, and again, covered with bright light and seeing bright light, I heard this beautiful voice tell me that our friend was going to pass away in about 6 months and that it was his time. He was ready to go, even though he would never have agreed to that at that time. He had 2 small children and a wife, and that I needed to kind of prepare the family if I wanted to, and that I was also told I would be at his bedside the day that he passed away. And the whole time I was being told, it just felt beautiful, like I was listening to music, and that I was happy and I felt warm and nothing seemed wrong at all. It was really beautiful. And that's what intuition is like. It's a very kind of, you feel loved, yet there's this neutrality to it. Of course, 20 minutes after that experience, I'm kind of a wreck, so sad and don't want to tell anyone what I experienced. Eventually, I did tell some people, and nobody was happy with what I heard. He did pass away 6 months later, and I was oddly at his bedside by myself for a few minutes before I alerted his wife that he was actually dying. All the wives were in the cafeteria in the hospital having lunch, and I was late to arrive. So I went directly to his room, and I was a nurse, so I knew that he was in the last stages of dying, and alerted the family so everybody could be with him.
Wow, there's such tremendous emotions and responsibility with that whole thing, right? Like, I'm sure it took a bit of time to even process that because it's wow. And has that like happened with anyone else, or it was just that specific time?
Probably. I'm super comfortable with death. Very, very comfortable with it. It's almost as if I like it. It's very weird. I'm drawn to it. I think that's why I liked the oncology floor. So yes, I definitely knew when my patients were going to pass. I remember this one time I was on the onc floor and we had an elder patient, a woman who, she was in her late 80s. She had been diagnosed with some sort of maybe a stomach cancer. I can't recall exactly what it was, but she had had some abdominal surgery to remove the mass, I believe. And her surgeon, who was taking care of her for whatever reason, he was on, in other words, I didn't know who her oncologist was, or it wasn't in the chart yet, or maybe she hadn't had an onc evaluation in the hospital. I'm not really sure what this situation was, but I had walked past her room. Of course, I'd been in her room, and I just love people unconditionally. It's this weird thing that I just have naturally. I love humanity. I'm madly in love with the human race. And I knew she was going to pass away like soon. And I really wanted her code status to be changed. So I called her surgeon. So I wanted her to be a do not resuscitate versus a resuscitate patient, which is not my decision. That would be up to her and the family and all of that. So I called her surgeon. He was on the surgical floor down below, and I was talking to him about the code test, and goes, "Why?" And I go, "Because she's dying." He goes, "What do you mean? She just had surgery. She's fine." I go, "No, she's dying." So I see him. He kind of hung up on me. He wasn't too happy with what I said. And I see him. He'd walked up a flight of stairs, and he was in the hallway, peeking into her room, watching her, breathe. And I don't think her code status was ever changed, but there's something about, I love transformation, whether it's when we're awake and alive and conscious, as we're moving through consciousness, there's a transformation that occurs, or when people are moving from human existence to non-physical existence. I just love any form of transformation. It brings me great joy.
Wow, that wow, that makes a lot of sense now. I want to ask this question before I forget, but it's not directly tied to, but as you were speaking, I'm just like, wow, this is this is amazing stuff. So, what are your dreams like? Like, do you ever dream of things that are like future things that are about to happen? Maybe parallel versions of Earth where things are happening, other planets. Like, what are your dreams are like?
Well, I don't remember my dreams, Sage,
Okay.
actually, unless they're precognitive. So I've had a slew of dreams, like maybe 5, that actually are predicting parts of my future, honestly. I haven't had one in a while. But my awake life is very much like how you described. In fact, I'm one of those people, I can't do drugs, obviously. I can barely drink, I feel like I'm high all the time, and mostly in a very positive way. So I'm constantly having conversations and awarenesses for multiple realities all the time. And it's very fun. It's very interesting to me. It brings me peace. I think why I can still feel so much incredible unconditional love for humanity, regardless of what people are doing or not doing. But I also maintain my vibration very high for myself and have taught that to my own family and correlate with friends who keep their energy high, because you have a very different experience when your vibrational pattern is at a high frequency versus a low frequency. Regardless of what's happening on earth, you just have a very different experience. So that makes my life easier as well. But yeah, I'm kind of stoned all the time. So if world events are being described, I'm getting an intuitive hit or download about why things are happening, which I don't always share with the general population because it wouldn't make people happy and it doesn't make sense to them. But yeah, I have psychic impressions constantly all the time, and it's extremely fun and interesting for me.
And I'm so happy that you said the high vibration thing because that's immediately what I feel from you and your energy. I'm like, you're just there all the time, like you're in that high vibrational state. So it makes sense that these things are just coming to you because you do need to be in that state to maintain that frequency. And it also makes sense why usually when you get those things, people probably wouldn't want to hear them because sometimes they might perceive them as a bad thing, like the person passing away. Like people wouldn't want to hear, oh, he's gonna pass away because they'd be like, oh, you're negative or something. But I guess to me, that's how you know it's even more of a real experience because there is that biasy towards it. It's like this is just information, and I'm telling you what it is,
Right.
and it's up to you to determine how you want to feel about that. But this is what I'm getting, and I really love and appreciate those people. So thank you for doing what you do because it's very important work. Is there any sort of diet that you follow to stay in that
Oh,
high vibratory state, or is there any rituals or anything to stay in a high vibratory state?
I don't do a lot of rituals, honestly. I'm not even a great fan of meditation, honestly. I love to be present. I love nature. I love the outdoors. I do automatic writing every single day. So I guess I do have a ritual. And if I'm feeling off or weird and I need to go to work or I need to do an interview or a podcast or, something like that, I will do some qigong. I love, love, love Qigong, even though I haven't even finished the teacher course that I signed up for, although I want to. I haven't, but I love, 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 love Qigong. So I do automatic writing every single day. And one of the questions I've started to ask when I do automatic writing is, what's the question that would be in my highest good to ask? And I'm always shocked by what the universe recommends for me. But I have a playful spirit. I love to play. I have a dog. I love flowers and nature and hiking. I have great friends and, of course, a slew of grandchildren that keep me in stitches. And I'm very loving family. I just love my family.
Is there anything
Oh,
in the range of
diet.
diet? Yeah.
Diet. So I've always had digestive issues, actually. So I don't eat gluten at all. It's to the best of my ability. I've never been checked for celiac. I don't know if I have that or not, but I don't eat that. I really reduce refined sugar as much as possible, although I did have some gummy bears yesterday. Some grandkids just got back from Panama and
I can't help but laugh. That's too good.
they were gluten free, but they were delicious.
Yeah.
I eat a lot of fruit, but berries and, and I do eat some dairy. I wasn't able to eat dairy for a long time, but I do now. I'm a carnivore. I kind of believe in the blood type diet. I think it's a really good, stepping tool for people. So I do eat protein. I don't have a plant-based diet. I could probably eat more vegetables. And then I do intermittent fasting. So I don't eat before 11, which I think really helps with my digestion. And I don't know if that's good for everyone. That could be just something as we chronologically change, our intestinal tract needs more rest. Not really sure. But I eat only organic food primarily, unless I'm eating out and grass fed. But I've eaten that type of food my whole life. My family was, again, very holistic when it came to our diet.
Powerful, powerful stuff. Thank you. So when it comes to intuition, I understand that some people find it difficult to kind of trust the information that's coming to them. How do we like separate like the mind, the monkey mind that's going on with stuff that's just automatic processes from like actual intuitive psychic downloads that are like, you know, clear, I guess.
Great question. And I know that's such a confusing situation for people. First of all, I would never even ask an intuitive question if I was in a bad mood, if my energy was low. And I'm talking about personal. When I work, I just naturally, 99% of the time, go into high frequency. Um, so I would wait till my vibrations elevated. So if I have something weird going on in my life and I need some intuitive guidance, and weird from just my perception, because weirdness is unique to everyone, I would wait till my vibrations elevated. So I might go on a walk with my dog. I might take a nap to just recalibrate my energy. I might go buy some flowers, go to the Seattle market and walk the hundreds and hundreds of flowers that they have in the market. I think people first need to find out what makes them happy. And most people, in my opinion, do not know what makes them happy because they don't feel their emotions. So they don't know what's going to bring them joy. Just like how you say, know how much you love music. I've been listening to um, different renditions of My Sweet Lord recently because it just brings me to tears and raises my vibration in such an extraordinary way. So like positive tears. So once you find things that actually raise your frequency, which is critical, then you can start to move into getting an intuitive guidance, which then you have to rest in the lower half of your body. And intuition is so different from the mind. So the ego resides in the brain. The ego is drenched in fear. So intuition is never communicated through fear, ever. Even when I was hearing that our beloved friend was going to cross over, which he did, and he's helped me so much now that he's on the other side. He's been a great friend and helper to me from the other side. I was told, when I was being told, I was in bliss, incredible bliss. So intuition is always calm, it's compassionate. So that means it's kind. And it's a little bit surprising in a good way. It's not surprising in it's kind of a delightful surprise. I always, when I'm getting intuitive information from you personally, which as a professional, typically getting intuitive information from a complete stranger is 1,000 times easier because you're not emotionally connected to them at all. You don't even know them. But reading for yourself, which makes us better readers, I think when you read for yourself, you want to recognize that your mind's not going to agree with your intuition. My mind never agrees with my intuition. My life changed drastically when I recognized I was intuitive, and the information my brain would tell me versus what my intuition would tell me would be night and day. And I started to make choices that were intuitively based, and it changed my entire life in every way, shape, and form for the better. For the better. So you have to recognize that the mind was only created for logic. Like Sage, you and I had to come on before we went live and check our lighting and sound and get to know each other a little bit because we had never met before. And that's what our logical mind needed, to get on computers appropriately and all of the things that we had to do. But intuition is very, very different than the logical brain.
Wow. So for the people who are they're they are starting to step into that higher vibrational awareness. They are having these intuitive downloads. Maybe they are like going through everyday work life and stuff, and they're just like getting this bombardment of downloads and information. And I hear this, honestly, I hear this in my friend group quite often. So
Yeah.
they're just like, I hear it, I understand it, but it just doesn't make sense to me. Like,
Well,
is that like if you were to create like how the doctor's like, hey, these things are happening to you, so I think this is happening. Like if we were going to create that for like a spiritual awakening, what would be your like symptoms of like things to say like, hey, if you're getting these intuitive downloads, if you're these things, this is what's happening to you on the intuition front or a spiritual awakening front.
I think, again, people have to stop listening to their mind. And that's so hard for humanity. We've been taught from every institution on the planet, from religious to educational to our parents and generations behind us, that you have to listen to your brain, that if we don't, we're not going to be safe. We're not going to make good decisions. We're going to be at risk. That's what we've been taught. And that is a complete lie. Well, it's not recent, maybe a couple of years ago, I was on another podcast with someone who was teaching a class, and they invited me to do some readings for some of their students. And I've been doing this professionally for 25 years, and I've always worked full time in the intuitive world. As soon as I started my practice, within maybe 5 months, I became full time. So I've had a lot of practice and a lot of experiences and many successes, I guess is what you would call them. And so I have confidence where I know not to listen to my brain. So this one person was expressing, and I couldn't see them. I couldn't see anyone on the podcast I could just hear their voices. And this person told me that they had a growth in their hand, that they had had surgery a couple times to have it removed, and it kept growing back. And now they were scheduled to have a very disfiguring surgery. And it was going to leave their hand disfigured and crippled. I immediately had a very different experience compared to what this person was saying. So in other words, I believe this person, I know this is what they were saying, but I saw this growth and I had no idea what it was logically. Intuitively, I saw the growth as a wart. And I knew what this person needed to do to get rid of it. They needed to do some near infrared and red light therapy on their hand. So because I've trust, and you have to start practicing. You have to start, doing some research with your intuitive downloads to find out how accurate they are for you, so that your logical mind will get quiet. Because once you start to have accurate experiences with your intuition, your mind will get quiet. It will go, oh, intuition is 1,000 times more accurate than the logical mind, which I personally believe. So I told this gentleman what I saw. I go, I don't know what this is. I'm sure it's not a wart. I was confident it was. And I go, but intuitively, it looks like a wart to me. And I would recommend you do this red light therapy, near infrared and red light therapy. And he told me it was cancer, and they weren't able to, it keeps growing back. So I ended up having a private session with him, and he did what I asked, which not everyone does follow my recommendations. Unfortunately, I wish they would, but many, many people do, but I can see it's scary, and he canceled the surgery. The tumor went away. His doctor said, we don't know what you're doing, but keep doing what you're doing. So intuition is 1,000 times more accurate than the logical mind.
Wow, that's great stuff. Wow, that just gave me like three different questions at once. So I tried to put them in each space so I can get it through. So the first question was, you've been doing this for over 20 years, so you've had that repetition of knowing how to trust. So it sounded like when you said not to trust the brain, it seems like a lot of times the brain is kind of making something that should be logical. It's like the logic is trying to come in, and the intuition is more of like just divine knowing. You just know it, so you just say it. Or
well, even in that moment when I was reading for him, and he told me it was cancer. Of course, I was an oncology nurse, which is, specializes in cancer. And so for a second, my brain went, uh-oh, you're like, you messed up here. I mean, my brain said that, but I've learned to ignore my mind. I've learned to go, well, that's interesting, but that's not intuitive, because that was fear dominated. I felt ashamed. I was a little embarrassed for a split second, right? For a split second. And I've learned to ignore, none of those are intuition. None of those are about my connection to God or the universe or the multisensory world. None of that is a part of that. So I just went back to what I said, and he actually liked what I said, and he did everything I recommended, and his growth went away. So imagine what modern medicine would be like. And I love all forms of medicine. I miss the hospital every day, literally. I do. I just think it's a magical place. Plus I opened up psychically there and saw my first, medium experience with the patient there, and many other experiences. But modern medicine uses logic, doesn't use intuition. And they look at medicine as one size fits all. And it makes sense. You have a growth, let's cut it out. That's very logical. But what if we started to look at people from an intuitive perspective, which we will ultimately. That's why lots of people come to individuals who have medical intuitive abilities, because they've already tried everything else. Like people who come to see me for medical health, they've already been to everyone else, first and foremost, the majority of them. And so I'm giving them different impressions and ideas, and I'm working on the emotional response system too. Like the hand is connected to the heart chakra, so there's something that he needed to work on. I don't remember our full session, but there was something he needed to work on about his heart chakra. And the heart chakra is really neutral, because this is universal love, and creation loves everything and everyone. War, famine, crime. The universe doesn't judge anything or anyone, and looks at every experience that's happening on earth as an opportunity for conscious growth. And we have every type of soul living here on earth, young souls, medium souls, old souls. We have this huge smorgasbord of perceptions and consciousness, and we all need different things to help us wake up or to grow. And sometimes souls don't even get to digest that growth until they're on the other side, so some people don't do any. From my perspective, the universe says, oh no, they are. It's like a slug's pace, but they are. I'm like, okay. Right. But some people, they save all their experiences, then they get to the other side, and then they kind of unearth everything, if you will, and begin to look at all the experiences they had to gain their consciousness outside of earth. So you just have to remember that anything fear, shameful, frustrated, that's your mind. And as soon as you can recognize that and step away from it, which really people can do, people have given so much power to their brains, they think they can't manage it, but that's not true. I think everyone should treat their brain like a dog. And dogs need tons of positive reinforcement, love, compassion, kindness, but management. I mean, I tell my dog every day, vive it. And then good boy, love you. So what if people started to speak kindly to themselves and show themselves compassion and appreciation and love, unconditional love to themselves? That's going to help enormously to let go of the fear-dominated ego, which is just fear. I think the definition in all of our dictionaries is inaccurate about ego. I think people are meant to love themselves unconditionally, which is an emotional experience to love yourself, like loving a child or a partner or a country or a tree or a pet. It's very emotional to love yourself when you really get into that frequency, which is a very high vibration, by the way. I think the true definition of ego is fear. Anytime we are engaging in fear, we are dancing with our ego. It doesn't matter the circumstances or the topic. That's what ego means.
So in the circumstances of like if I so for me, for instance, like if I was having trouble breathing or something like that, how do I separate of like intuitive knowing from like the fear-based perception of the mind? Because if intuitively I'm feeling something and it's saying like you have a mass or something like on your lungs, how do I know that that's like divine truth, even though my mind could take it as something negative and run with it? Like intuitively, like it could be just non-partial, like neutral information, and it was like, there's a mass on your heart or your lungs, but like the monkey mind will maybe say the same thing and you maybe feel fear about it. So
Yeah.
does that make sense, what I'm
Such a
saying?
great question. First
Yeah,
of
like,
all, the
yeah.
universe knows you really well. Really, 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 really well. So it would never use language that would bring you fear. Ever. Ever. So if you don't like the word tumor, it would never tell you that way. Ever. So that's the other part that humans have to recognize, that the mind is loud, it's aggressive, it's terrified, it's so strong. And we're learning to make it quiet because it's the happiest when it's quiet. So intuition, when it comes in, it's always communicated with compassion and kindness. So the universe would never say something to you like, oh, you have a mass on your lung, unless those words brought you peace or calm, or you thought they were interesting. It would not freak you out. Just like when I was having that experience when I learned that our friend was passing, or was going to pass, I felt blissed out. It was when I got out of that energy and I dropped my vibration to think about his wife and his children and himself, everything that he was going to go through. Because younger people, when they have health issues, it can be harder for them to pass away because all of their, a lot of their organs have to stop working. They may have a disease process in their body that's leading them to death, but they have a lot of healthy organs in their body, and it's more challenging to leave the planet that way.
Thank you, thank you, thank
Does
you.
that make sense?
Yes, that's exactly what I was looking for a answer wise. That because that clicks and it makes sense. And I don't think I've ever heard anyone ever say anything like that. So thank you for saying
You're
that.
welcome. Yeah, the universe knows us so well. It knows what words we like, what music makes us happy. Like sometimes I don't own music like you do. Like I don't even have a record. I've never had a record player. I don't have a cassette player. I listen to music on, devices that are in my home, but I'm not a fan of music like, I mean, I am, but not like you are. And
I understand.
right? But sometimes the universe will play a song in my head to answer a question for me. And I don't even own the music, right? So, but I know the lyrics. I heard them maybe 20 years ago. And so I know all the lyrics, and then it's the lyrics that are answering the question for me. So the universe is creative, playful, loves to surprise people. It loves
Yes.
happy surprises. Not some people think it's scary surprises, but that's again, the universe isn't scary. You know,
Right.
I've I've never been fearful. But when my first child was born, this is an example of not being afraid. And again, I didn't know I was intuitive. I was 24 at the time, and I was away from home. My kid's dad it was in college, so we were living in Oregon. He was going to university there, and we didn't know anyone, hardly anyone. And I'm holding our, brand new baby, no family around. And I was a really nervous parent. I was a helicopter parent for sure when our kids were little. Sorry, kids. And I heard the universe tell me very sweetly that this child is a soul, and this child will stay on earth as long as it wants to. And if it decides to leave before I leave earth, it has nothing to do with me, has everything to do with its soul's desire to continue its consciousness and its own personal growth of awareness and its own personal desires for experience. And I think some people would think that was freaky. It wasn't freaky to me. It gave me peace, kind of helped me to relax a little bit and not be so worried, all the time.
Yes. Yeah. Uh, that makes complete sense to me. The Is there any kind of like reoccurring alternative medicines that things that you've been hearing that have been really successful at helping people who might be going through hard times? Is there any certain things that have been have had really good success rates with, certain issues that people might have had?
Yeah, it's funny how I get like a group of stuff that works for the clients. I used to see 25 people a week back in the day, but now I see 6 a week. I book out 3 years in advance, just FYI for your audience. And my calendar is currently closed until the end of this year, and then I'll reopen for 2027. So there, right now, I have like a little sack of things that I'm recommending to people who are currently seeing me, or you know, the majority of them, let's say. Not necessarily for children. Children heal fast. When I work with kids, I typically spend time working with their parents. I have one session with the child, and I always work on the child energetically, but I always work with the parents, because if I can get the parents to change their perception and change their energy, that's going to help their child to thrive. It's just incredible, because kids are copying their energy from their parents, basically. Because when we come to Earth, we forget our past lives. We forget about energy. We forget that we are light. And so as we are moving into socialization, which brings all the forgettingness, by the way, socializing our young kids, they need to have their parents in high frequency and high vibration so that they can maintain their light. But right now I have a few things that, seem to be effective, but everybody needs to check with their doctors, especially if you're taking medication, because herbs are powerful. So that's incredibly important. I'm not a doctor, not a naturopath, don't have my nursing license any longer. So, keep all those. I think that predominantly when I look at women, I think if they start to take herbs to support their hormones earlier, I think that would be excellent. And there's this one formula that naturopaths and acupuncturists that I work with love. I've been taking it for quite a while now too. I wish I'd started taking it earlier. So early would be like maybe late 30s, maybe 40s, or, you know, if you're seeing a naturopath and your hormones are starting to change and you're in your early 30s, you could start then. So there's one particular supplement, and I don't get paid by any of these companies, by the way. It's by Integrative Therapeutics. It's called HPA Adapt, and it just has this really interesting combination that's not unique, by the way, but maybe the way they put it together, it just works better than other forms of supplements to support hormones. It has no hormones in it. Now, people who shouldn't be taking herbs to support their hormones are anyone who's had cancer. It's just not recommended. At least that's what I've read and what I've heard, but you can always ask your doctors, your naturopaths, your practitioners. They know your health better. But I think because hormonal changes are a part of our experience, although as we evolve, our hormones are going to change later and later in life, because to continue this species, we're going to need to, create later in life, because couples or individuals are choosing not to have children so early, which I think is healthy and wonderful. Have careers and figure out what you want. And of course, there are people who don't want to have children, which is also healthy. That's lovely. It's not a necessity. So I think that would be a great thing for people to start taking earlier in life. It also calms down the sympathetic aspect of the autonomic system and allows us to get out of high cortisol levels. It's just a very healthy thing, but always check with your practitioners. And then for individuals who have joint issues, again, you have to really check with your practitioner, because some pharmacology doesn't work with this particular digestive enzyme. It's called serrapeptase. And it's a digestive enzyme that eats proteins in the body. So you definitely don't want to take it if you've gotten like some sort of, if you have like a shoulder replacement. You want to wait until it's been cemented in connective tissue, just to be on the safe side. But you also can't take it with any anticoagulants. And people take them for various reasons, anticoagulants. But it helps with joint pain. It's really good for cardiac health. We have a video that we send out to people to look at. And there's different ways to take it. Like you can take it with other digestive enzymes and other herbs, or you can take it separately. I like to take it separate, but it's really helpful for individuals. I think it even helps with like maybe fibroids or cysts, because it eats proteins. I think it's what it could do to the human body could be very positive and effective. And it's something I never heard about, even in the highly holistic family that I grew up. Like all of my siblings and I have our own little pharmacology of herbs and vitamins. But please check with your health practitioners, because again, herbs are powerful. So those are things that really can be helpful. Another thing that can be helpful, I love to see men as well, but the majority of my clients are women, by the way. But I still see men. I do, but not as much as the female population. Even after having a baby, sometimes the pelvic floor isn't as strong. And there's machines like the Power Plate or the Life Pro plate that you can buy on Amazon vibrate and make small muscles work. Because to help the pelvic floor, you really need a lot of small muscles to work, not just large muscles. So you stand on this vibration plate that goes up and down, sideways, back and forth, and it makes your small muscles get stronger. Again, if it's something, again, to ask your physical therapist or your doctor, because, people could fall off these plates, so you want to make sure that it's a safe choice for you. But it's something that young women, as they're in their childbearing years, or even people who are older, as our muscle mass decreases, these vibrational plates can be great at maintaining muscle mass. It even helps lift your face, because you've got, I think, 37 muscles or something like that in the face. So those are some ideas that could be helpful for people.
Thank you. That was really good. Was the first one you said, I think, was the HPA, right? HPA
Yeah,
adapt. Is
adapt.
that also something that men could use, or is that just mostly
I
women?
think so. I mean, it's going to have maca root that helps with estrogen. So maybe greater for younger men, but
Right.
older men start to have more estrogen, so it's probably not the best for them. For
Right.
men, what I recommend that they start to take as an herb, which I actually take, is horny goatweed. It actually helps with male hormones. And we all have, like women have some male hormones too. So I think horny goatweed is really cool to take. I think that helps with men's hormones. Yeah. At any age. At any age.
Right. And
Right.
to add to that, I think I take Korean ginseng, and I believe it's kind
Yes,
of in a loosely in the same kind of family. It kind of helps with
it
blood flow,
does.
testosterone, and stuff like that. So
Yes,
there
that's
you
right.
go, audience.
Yeah.
So as we wind down, I always like to talk about like we talk a lot about the present moment because I think the present moment is like really important, the things that we need to do to better ourselves right now. But where do you see us going in the future? What does the future humans look like? What is humanity in the future? Yeah, what does that look like?
It's a great question. I don't know if everyone always likes my answers, but I don't see anything
That's
to.
okay.
Okay, thank you,
That's
Sage.
yeah.
Thank you.
This audience is up to you. I just want the pure unbiased answer, whether it's however you take it. Let's just get the best answer,
Good.
highest and
Thank you.
bestest.
Thank you. I don't see the world ending, by the way. I think Earth is the happiest she's ever been in any documented time. She's at a very high frequency, which is allowing the rest of humanity to raise their vibration. So she's enjoying nurturing almost 8 billion human souls, not to mention all the other souls. Like every blade of grass is a soul, all over Earth. What I see happening, some people talk about like there's going to be this mass consciousness. I don't see that, but it's going to feel like that a little bit because individuals are waking up. And that's really how we get to mass consciousness. We need individuals to wake up, individuals to find their joy, individuals to quiet their mind, individuals to have multi-sensory experiences. So I see that actually starting now. I mean, I really saw it a couple years ago, which surprised me. I didn't think that was going to happen in my lifetime, quite frankly. So, again, the universe likes to give happy surprises. So I see it really happening starting this year, where more and more people are waking up. And waking up means that you realize that you're more than what you thought you were. You realize that the world is more than when you thought it was. I walk my dog a lot, and our neighborhood backs up to wetlands. So we have coyotes here and bobcats, and I mean, it's a wild place sometimes. I don't walk Charles out too late at night because an owl will dive at me if it's like 10 o'clock at night. But when I'm walking Charles and the frogs, like they are right now, they're very busy right now, start to make noise, I stop and actually just I can't see them because they're so tiny and there's so much brush. I'm looking for them, but then I just stop and close my eyes and really just connect to the tree frog and just feel its vibration and thank it for its beauty and its song. So that's what humans are starting to do independently, is they're starting to see the beauty in the world and starting to see how beautiful they are and how powerful they are, and that we're not what we've been told that we are. We are beings of light having this incredible experience in these sacred bodies that we've created and allowed to be part of the housing of our light. That's what I see happening, is people waking up to their magnificence, falling in love with themselves, even for a second, is incredibly powerful. And that's what takes us into the multisensory world and allows us to have mm, more of an awareness of what's really going on, the truth of the truth of the truth of the truth. I think one of the things the pandemic did for us, and I do think it was an overall positive experience, although not everyone would agree with me on that. And of course, I didn't lose anyone in the pandemic at all. So but souls choose when they want to go and how they want to go. Many, even before they reincarnate, even though we have 4 exit routes that could happen at any moment, we can choose to leave the earth. But having people work from home and not having to go into corporations as much and to have their own space and eat the food in their refrigerator and go for a walk or go to a coffee shop for a break, I think that's helping humanity to get out of this mind dominated, fear entrenched false reality that individuals have created for themselves, so that they can move into the expansive truth of their magnificence and begin to change their own personal lives. And when individuals do that, that helps the masses. That's what helps humanity grow, is by discovering and living our own personal joy, which has nothing to do with the information between our ears.
Yes, I agree 100%. Do you, from your perspective, are there any like ancient historical things that are like recurrently playing out? Like, are we kind of working out some of the energies from Atlantis, Lemuria? Like, is any of that type of energy at play currently that we're working through to get to where we need to go?
Yes, I think we've been working on it for a very long time, honestly. Because people have held Atlantis in such a high vibration, which of course it was a higher vibration than Earth is right now in many ways, but Atlantis fell from grace. Atlantis was our first full step into the ego. And Lemuria was a higher vibrational reality. And Lemuria, when Atlantis was falling, before the Atlantis completely fell, it just dissolved itself. And, because Lemurian and Atlantis people knew that death is not real. Your energy will just go into a different reality. So yes, maybe we're coming into a place. It's a really great question, Sage. Maybe we're coming into a place where we're starting to see how magical we are, which Atlantis knew that about themselves, why we're dismantling our ego. Because I think some of the things that are helping us, even though they're extremely uncomfortable and from my perspective, and I'm sure your Sage and many other people's, unnecessary, but some of the conflicts that are alive, unfortunately, on Earth right now are helping people to realize. Maybe you don't need to realize, Sage, and I don't need to realize, but other people need to realize that solving problems that way never works. It doesn't work. It's not the way for us to move forward as a race of beings. That we have to figure out ways not to be so irritated or aggravated by each other, where it costs the lives of many, many innocent people around the world. So right now, these conflict experiences are helping many people who weren't very awake, let's say, wake up and go, wait a minute, why are we doing this? Whereas sometimes older souls, which older soul types listen to these types of podcasts like yours, Sage, and are interested in spirituality, and they're the ones who are most confused and disheartened by conflict that occurs on the planet. No matter how conflict occurs, it really bothers them, but they need to recognize that this conflict is really not for their growth, other than their need to detach and not take it personally or feel guilty, because older souls know how to solve problems. We've lived hundreds of thousands of lifetimes, so we know how to end things. But younger souls or even medium souls have, a desire to learn about compassion. And so it's during these experiences where we begin to grow and change, because different soul types are starting to have awakening so that they can grow their soul faster, because there is no time. So we don't have to grow our consciousness over millions of lifetimes. We can have some lifetimes or many lifetimes where we have rapid growth in consciousness. And so because we're in the true Aquarian age for the Earth, finally, this is really our first entrance into it. It's really not going to be locked in until November, but it's really here. And Aquarian energy is all about compassion. And of course, future seeing and understanding. So I have great excitement for the Earth, but I think a lot of it happens at the individual level. Although for older souls, as we spend time with more older soul types, we may not feel that way. But that is indeed what's happening.
Is there anything specific happening in November, or is it just kind of
I
time frame?
I think it has to do with, and I'm not an astrologer, but I think it has to do with Aquarius locking into Pluto, if I've said that correctly. So yeah, it retrograded back into Capricorn after its original movement in the spring of last year, but it's going to lock in November. And Pluto is a very powerful planet, slow, because it's an outer planet. It takes a long time, and we won't experience Aquarius energy and Pluto in any of our lifetimes. Anyone who's alive today will never experience it again. So it's quite beautiful.
Wow. Oh, I, just from that, I have so many questions that would take us way beyond our allotted time, but I'm going to narrow it down to my last two questions. What does love mean to you?
Gosh, it's such a beautiful energy. I can tell people that when you allow yourself to have intuitive experiences, one of the things that you feel a lot is love, because creation is extremely loving. But it's a very unconditional thing. It's kind of, so hard to describe, but it's like looking into a flower that's blooming for the first time this year, or um, looking into the eyes of a very young being. You know, it's everywhere. It's in everything. It's in flooring. It's in walls. It's huge. It's highly expansive. It's very alive. And a lot of humans don't allow themselves to experience the true authenticity of love. Maybe for moments, but not every day. I think what will help your audience, Sage, to understand that as they step into their natural intuitive abilities, one of the things that they will start to feel over and over and over again is love. And it's kind of shocking when you first start to hear the universe or feel it or sense it in some way. It makes you cry, which I kind of forgot about. But I was talking to some colleagues of mine, and we were kind of reminiscing from our original psychic openings, that were like, oh, these are like real things happening. I'm changing. Everything's changing. And we all talked about how we just cried and cried and cried because we'd never felt that love, that amount of love ever. And so that's another part of what happens when you allow yourself to grow intuitively. You get to feel the universe loving you. I can't even imagine what it's like when we're outside of our bodies, because, Earth is a lower vibrational reality. So if the love that we feel here can move us to tears, happy tears, amazing tears, it's almost like it's hard to believe that we're that lovable, but we are. Imagine what it's going to be like when we're outside of Earth. It's pretty incredible.
Yes, yes, I agree with everything you said. What does the sun represent to you? It's the Praise the Sun podcast, so I gotta ask.
Ooh. I don't think about the sun for our Earth often, which is interesting. I don't know why. I think about the moon a lot, but I do believe God, and I like that word. I know not everyone does, and there's other words, that we can use, like creation or universe. But I think God is a ball of fire. I think God is pure energy. I think we are all, in truth, pure energy. We are all irreplaceable parts of God. And as we were created out of the inspiration of the ball of fire, we were a beautiful representation of the original ball of fire, inspired by the ball of fire. That's why we're all part of the ball of fire. That's why it's so incredibly important for all of us to step into our own worth and magnificence. And a lot of that can happen if people are nice to themselves and kind. I think having an internal dialogue of, you did a great job today, honey, I'm proud of you. Or if you're having a bad day, I'm sorry you feel that way, honey, I love you so much. Or whatever enduring terms you want to use for the rest of your life, I think is critical. But I think of balls of fire as God.
Yes, that is absolutely beautiful. So this last part is going to be something brand new. I saw it in a podcast and I just loved it. So it's called the Diary of a CEO podcast for the audience. So in that podcast, he lets the guests ask a question for the next person, and you don't know who the next person is. So I think this would be a really good, fun one for you as a psychic. So, is there a question that you would like to leave for the next guest?
Okay. Wow. 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 So I'm assuming your guests are like me. Correct?
Some of them are, some of them have had near death experiences, but they're all in the spiritual
Oh,
community. So
oh,
it's just
oh.
not specifically
Okay.
psychics,
Okay.
but it's just yeah,
Okay. All
wide
right.
open.
Okay. Oh, that's okay. So, what I would ask your guest, your future guest that I don't know about at all, is to share the greatest loving experience that they've ever had, whether that was when they were dying or when they were fully alive on earth. If they could describe the greatest loving experience they ever had in as much detail as possible, that would be amazing.
Yes, I love that. That is going to be so powerful. Thank you so much. Where can people, I know your schedule's booked right now, but where
Right.
can people find you or reach out to you?
Sure. So I am the author of Intuitive Self Healing. You can find it anywhere, Amazon. Also, an Audible series called How to Communicate with Your Spirit Guides. And I teach classes all the time on my platform at energyintuitive.com. I have two classes coming up. One's called The Soul's Journey, and the other one's all about vibration and frequency and manifesting. They're 8-week courses. I'll start later this month. And then I also teach on the Shift Network. So that's another place that you can find me. I also have my own podcast. It's released every Thursday, but I'm now doing it twice a week, I think. So energyintuitive.com.
Absolutely wonderful, Marie. Thank you so much for your time. Audience, thank you so much for spending your time with us on this day. And yeah, thank you all. Praise the sun. I'll see y'all next time.
Thank you, Sage. You are a gift. Your energy is beautiful. You are a gift. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone.